Hello, 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 John. I am so thankful that you are talking to us today about the precious prize and specifically about the topic of tragedy and gun violence. So, before we get started on that topic, I want to say to you, welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, one of the reasons that I'm so glad that you are handling this topic is because of your experience as an officer in the military, and you also know a lot about this particular subject. Because in the book, there were a number of lives lost in the story due to gun violence. And so, does this mean that everyone should be armed to keep from becoming a victim?
No, and I will tell you, I think that that is one of the tragedies of the way that we think about guns. We don't shoot bullets out of the sky. A victim of gun violence, and it sometimes can increase the likelihood that there is gun violence. Unfortunately, you have a number of people that don't feel safe unless they have the ability to kill someone else. The gun as a deterrent, ultimately as a tool, is still just to kill someone else. It does not protect you from harm being done to you. Um, the reality of how to not feel like a victim is don't treat yourself like a victim. Don't
Mm.
treat yourself in a helpless manner. Choose not to live in a way in which you are scared every minute of the harm that may come, but instead see the people around you as your neighbor and love them as such. I'm not saying to be irresponsible. I'm not suggesting that there aren't certain realities with sickness in the world, but your mindset is how you keep yourself from being a victim
Okay.
of the threat of gun violence.
Okay. Well, we see in the story that Dawn lost her husband and the twins lost their father due to gun violence. And my question to you is, can people ever get over that type of tragedy?
Well, I will say that there is something that is always going to be there that you will remember. There's an area, a father, a husband. These are people whose lives matter. Um, and and I won't say that you would ever forget that or it ever won't hurt. I've lost people in my life who I miss to this day, and some have been lost to tragic means. I will say that there are ways to have the strength and the wisdom to carry on, to grow, to learn, to heal from some of the hurts that their loss presents. There's a peace in knowing that this isn't on accident, and that um, there is help, there is support, and there are ways for you to go on with your life.
Okay. Well, we know that PTSD is associated with war, but it's also associated with those who've experienced gun violence. And so, can you explain what that is for our readers, what that PTSD is, and then just uh, how we can cope with that?
Yes. I'm in the military, and I've had a number of my soldiers who suffered from post-traumatic stress syndrome or disorder, and a lot of that has to do with they, in their regular course of duty, have had to witness things that were shocking, that were traumatic, that left a major impact on them. They see it when they sleep, they hear it, they're reminded of it, they know the smells, the sounds, their emotions. And that event was so major and so hard on their humanity that it's hard to do other things because you keep getting drawn back to that place.
Mhm.
Um, Gun violence also takes you to that place where you see things happen to the human body that you shouldn't experience. you see a life lost in the most tragic way, and the sounds, the vivid smells, the sights of it all are hard to let go. They keep recurring in your subconscious, they keep recurring in different places. And what you see people do is try to disconnect from their senses, disconnect from the world as a means of coping with it. The similarities between gun violence in the streets when you're not expecting it and the horrors of war where it is more expected are that the human body, they don't have, it doesn't have but so many ways to respond to that overload of both emotion and the various things that happen to your senses.
Hmm. Hmm. So then, when we think about this, this final question that I have for you, because this time has just sped by, just from this book and from the things that happen, how can we as a society help people feel safe, in the midst of all of these like mass shootings and things of this nature? Our children are even dealing with it as it relates to tragedy and gun violence.
So the thing that I would say, I feel like my responsibility as an officer was always to protect the humanity of my soldiers, because the various acts of war start to strip that humanity away a little bit by little. I feel like similarly, gun violence and mass tragedy starts to strip at our humanity, which leaves us open to those various types of wounds. And thus, I would say, as a society, one of the things that we can do is do things to protect and build our humanity. What are the things that we're doing to help us to see other living people, to show empathy, to demonstrate connection, to continue to build the bonds and relationships with each other so that when tragedy happens, it's not born on a single individual, but born across a group where there is support. When something happens, the victim is not dehumanized, it's not ignored, that the hurt of it can be felt, and hopefully the senselessness of it can be used to stop it from happening again. The best thing we can do is unite, is come together, is work together, and to build a strong enough community where this is not who we are.
Well, again, I thank you so much for talking with us. And I want to give you the final words that we find this again in this story. Of course, it was Christian fiction, but as Christians, we're going to have to live with in this society these kinds of things happening. So I thank you for your words of wisdom for how we can hope, how we can cope, and how we can help. And let me give you the final say about tragedy and gun violence.
Okay. Um, so the main thing I would say is to everyone, especially other veterans, is that you are not alone. You don't have to be alone. There's somebody who cares about you. There's a community that loves you and is here to encourage you. You are a person, and these feelings are real, but they do not have to be the end. There is hope. There are things beyond all of the trauma that has happened. And I wish you nothing but the best.
All right. Thank you.